Hi there, I'm Nancy Herring from Now We're Cooking. It's Tuesday, so it's time for tips, tricks, and treats. Last week we were talking about stocking your pantry to have dinner on time. Today I want to talk about stocking your pantry if you're interested in baking. Bread baking is a whole nother genre, and I'm not really going to touch on that, but I just want you to think that if you have some basic things on hand, you can make brownies, you can make cookies, you can do some things, and I'm going to give you some recipes and show you how to do a couple. But when I say basic, flour, sugar, brown sugar, powdered sugar, baking soda, baking powder, salt from the refrigerator, eggs, butter, shortening if your recipe calls for shortening, good vanilla. And not only is it nice to have those things on hand, but it's nice to have containers to keep them in. Because if you keep your sugar or flour in a bag, it's just a pain, and you don't want to get it out and it spills. And I'm using some things from Progressive, but I mean big glass jars. There's all kinds of things out there. What I've got going on, we're going to talk as we go along. There's a recipe called One Bowl Brownies that one of the chocolate manufacturers did, and I've done it for years and years. What's in the microwave now are 4 ounces of unsweetened chocolate and a stick and a half of butter. There is unsweetened chocolate, which is just as it says, there's no sugar. Bittersweet chocolate does have sugar. Semi-sweet has sugar. So you kind of want to be sure that you're getting, this is made by Bakers. It's called Unsweetened. Ghirardelli also does an unsweetened bar. And when I was little, the boxes came with 8 ounces and you had to unwrap each little square. Now there's 4 ounces in a package. So you can see that this is a microwave safe bowl. My butter has melted, my chocolate has not. And you just want to stir until the chocolate melts. If you wait until your chocolate melts, until you can visibly see it melt while it's in the microwave, you have then burned your chocolate. But the butter melts much faster, and so you just stir and stir and stir until it melts all the way. If you don't want to stir this much, I just broke the chocolate with my hands. I didn't chop it up or anything. Smaller pieces would obviously melt a little faster. But this is a microwave safe bowl, and that's why it's the beauty of One Bowl Brownies, is you don't have to melt on a pan on the stove and then put it in your mixer bowl or anything. And I can tell when my chocolate is all melted when there's no lumps, and I've got one small little lump. So I'm going to keep stirring on that. This is also a pretty easy recipe because it's 1 cup of, you only need your 1 cup measure. So I'm pretty sure the chocolate's all melted. It looks so delicious. If you stick your finger in here and taste it, it is not good. So I need 2 cups of sugar. This container has both a pour spout and a dig in. I just want to dig in because I'm not a very good pourer. I didn't fill that all the way up, so I'm going to overfill this one a little bit. So I've got my 2 cups of sugar. You just need a bowl and a spoon. So I want to stir that until the sugar is completely incorporated into the butter and the chocolate mixture. I see a teeny bit of sugar down the bottom. Okay, calls for 3 eggs. I had a big dilemma this morning as to did I put enough eggs in the things I was making, and fortunately I had. So my eggs they don't necessarily say room temp, but eggs at room temperature will blend better than eggs straight out of the fridge. So these have been out of the fridge for a little while. So 3 eggs. And to me, this is one of the only things I do with just a spoon. So I want to break the yolks a little bit, and then I want to just stir, stir, stir. And what you're looking for is so that it looks like brownie batter and that you don't see strings of eggs or bits of yolk or anything. So I've got nice chocolatey mixture. I need a cup of flour. This is all-purpose flour. There's lots of flour out there. There's bread flour, there's whole wheat flour. Most of these most recipes are gonna, unless they say otherwise, are going to be all-purpose flour. And flour, I do want to scrape off the top. And this is pretty handy. I don't have any of these to sell you right now, but that snaps to the top. So, the only other ingredient is vanilla and nuts. I personally don't think a brownie is a brownie unless you have chopped nuts in it. If you don't like nuts, don't put them in. I use pecans. If you like walnuts, put walnuts in. If you want to go for broke, add some chocolate chips. You can add a little bit of espresso powder, which does not make them coffee tasting. It just makes them a little more chocolatey. So I'm just going with the regulars. So I do have a cup of nuts that I chopped earlier. These are pecans. It calls for a teaspoon of vanilla, and you may or may not know that I measure vanilla like that. It's probably way more than a teaspoon, but that's okay. So that's it. Super easy because I had the ingredients on hand. And that's, to me, the secret in all this. And, you know, I do a lot of baking, so I buy big quantities. But a 5-pound sack of flour, well, they're now like 4-pound bag of sugar and 5-pound bag of flour will last you a while. And these are easier than a box of brownie mix, and to my taste, a lot better. 9 by 13 pan. You can use glass, you can use metal, you can use ceramic, whatever you have. And I've sprayed it with spray oil. I didn't use Baker's Joy because I didn't have any. And I just want to make sure everything is blended. Now, if you want exact corners, you can line this pan with parchment or foil so that you can pull out the brownies after they're baked. And then when you cut them, you'll have perfect little edges. I don't have a problem eating the edges that are not as pretty as they could be because they taste delicious. So, and I have family people that would fight over licking this, but they're not here. So I'm just going to spread it in the pan. I'm going to use my finger for a sec, and they bake at 350 for about 30 minutes. You stick a toothpick in and you want a little bit of brownie on the edges. You don't want to over bake these. And so they're going in to do their thing. They will not be baked by the time I'm done, but I will show you some we did earlier. And if I don't set the timer, I'll be a little confused. So, brownies. Quick, easy, delicious. The other recipe I'm going to show you is something that my family has always called white cookies. My mother had a Hamilton Beach mixer that she got, I think, as a bride. Hasn't been made in years. This recipe came with the mixer. You know how you get a little booklet with the mixer? It's a basic sugar cookie, but I've never seen another one that's made like this. Most cookie recipes, you beat the fat and the sugar together till it's light and fluffy. You add the eggs. This recipe, you put everything in the order that it's written, then you turn the mixer on. So it calls for 1.5 cups of flour. I often double this recipe, but I'm only doing 1. So it's a little, I keep thinking, oh, it needs more. So 1 cup. These are really nifty measure cups that have a 2/3 and a 3/4, which I really like because there's a lot of recipes that call for that. So I've got my 1.5 cups of flour. A little air bubble in there, okay. I need a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And at this time I'm not using kosher salt, I'm using just table salt because it seems to dissolve in cookies a little bit better. And I'm measuring real carefully, you saw that, right? And then a teaspoon of baking powder. Baking powder and baking soda are not interchangeable, and you want to be sure that they're somewhat fresh. This one is best, well, it was best till, no, it's best till 2027, and I opened it in November of 25, which I know because I wrote that down. If you haven't used your baking powder and baking soda in years, don't put it in your cookies. get some new ones and pay attention to how old it is, because you don't want to mess up all the other ingredients by not having your baked goods rise. This calls for shortening. This is Crisco. It comes now in a box, and it calls for a half a cup, which is, it comes like a stick of butter. You can just cut into it and do that. It calls for 1 egg. This is where I had the panic earlier about, oh no, do I have an egg or not? So I've got the egg in it. It calls for 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And I've got my handy dandy 2/3 cup measure cup here. As I say, this pours, but I don't always trust myself to pour in this, for this type recipe. It calls for 1/2 teaspoon vanilla, and again, I'm just gonna go bloop. It calls for a tablespoon of milk, and I didn't have a carton of milk here, and I had some at home, so I brought some milk in a little jar, so I didn't have cream or anything here that I could use. So that's, you just put everything in there, and I'll show you. I mean, it looks kind of odd. It's all in the mixer bowl, and I just lower the beater, turn it on, and let it go. It'll take, whoop, turn it down a little bit. When it forms a ball, I have a couple of options. I can use it in a cookie press and press out cookies like I do bizcochitos. I can roll it out on a baking mat and use cookie cutters and cut them. But the way the recipe suggests and the way we've always done it is you make your own slice and bake cookies. So I'm going to end up rolling it in parchment paper, and I'll show you the ones I've already done. And then you just slice it and bake it. So it takes a few minutes. I want to be sure that everything is getting blended. So it's starting to form, but it's not 100% there yet. This is where you're mixing away and you think this is never going to turn into cookie dough, but it does. You'll see it kind of form a ball, and at the very end I'll just use my hands. This is a really fun recipe to keep on hand, so that if you want a fresh cookie, you can just slice off what you need, throw it in the oven, and bake. Now it's most definitely forming a ball. You can see most of it is clung to the beaters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the beaters. Get it all off of there, and I do want to stir through one more time. And I'm going to move the mixer off so I can show you. All right, you sit over there. So, what I've got in my mixer bowl is cookie dough that has come together. And what I want to do, as I say, I don't want to roll this, I don't want to slice and do all that. I want to show you how to make your own log. We used to use wax paper. I don't even own any wax paper anymore, but I always have parchment paper. So wax paper, parchment paper. Plastic wrap is not heavy enough. So this will make about 2 logs, and this is kind of comes undone, so I want to wrinkle it so it'll stay flat, if that makes sense, to make something wrinkly to turn it flat. But I want to do about half of this, and with my hands, I'm just going to form it into a log, and then I'm going to roll it back and forth. That'll make it a little smoother. I want to tuck in the ends because I want them as smooth as possible. Even though if they're a little crunch, or not crunchy, if they're not as smooth, then you get to cut that off and eat it, because cookie dough is highly prized commodity in my family. One of my brothers even got rolls of cookie dough in his Christmas stocking one year because he always liked to eat it more than bake it. Then I would just throw that in the freezer. So let me do the second one, and then I'm going to show you, I'm going to cut one that I did earlier. I took it out of the freezer a couple minutes ago because when they first come out of the freezer, sometimes when you slice them, they come apart a little bit. This one's not going to be as big because I put more in that other one. And you can make them as fat or as thin as you want them, because that will basically be the size of your cookie. So if you want a lot of button-sized cookies, you can make them smaller. I've seen people like pack it into cans, and that just seemed like a whole lot of trouble to me. But if you're super precise, you could certainly do that. So I've got my little log. I'm going to wrap it up, twist the ends a little bit, and then that'll go in the freezer. But the one I did earlier, I baked one, and I'll show you. So it's super cold, and all I need to do, I had a knife out, and I put it in a very safe spot. See, that's what I was saying is the end piece. You can or can't use it depending. But you slice them about 1/4 of an inch, give or take, and this is just eyeballing. You want them as consistent as possible because you want them to bake evenly on your cookie sheet. So those two end pieces I may push together and make one cookie, or I may eat them when you're not looking. I don't need to grease it or even put a Silpat down. This has already had some baked on it, and they don't stick, they don't do anything. Sprinkles are a fun thing to do on these. So what I did earlier, you can do it 2 ways. You can sprinkle straight on the cookies, but I also put some kind of a combo of sprinkles in my little dish, and I just put them down on it. That one ended up all pink sprinkles. I have kind of pink sugars and then some. I've even once or twice gotten carried away and rolled the outside of my log in sprinkles, so the tops of the cookies were plain, but the sides had sprinkles, which is another fun thing. But this makes, I can get about 12 cookies from a log, and that's not a bad way to have cookies in a hurry. And then I want to show you the finished of these things. So really, if you have some of the basics on hand, you can, if you have to go out and purchase all this at once, you may never bake ever. And if you're into bread, that's a whole nother thing involving, you know, all of these ingredients as well as yeast and various other flours if you choose to. But I find baking very fun. It's very fun to share. That's it. I'm going to throw them in the oven for about 10 minutes. But I want to show you. So, what does all this look like before you eat it? So the pan of brownies and sliced brownies, and again, as large or small as you want to eat them. They're on the fudgy side, which is what I like. I don't even know what cakey brownies are because this is my brownie. So it's what I've always done. And the cookies, let me put them on a plate and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. These are a little bit bigger because the way I did the log. So what I'm looking for when they're done is a slight darkening around the edges and the bottoms are lightly browned. I have burned these many times in my life and people eat them anyway. But the sprinkles stay on. The plain ones are just lovely. You can ice them if you want. That is not, I'm not a cookie icer. I just want to show you that by having some ingredients on hand. The other thing I kind of glossed over, if you are if you want to start baking cookies or you want to become a better cookie baker, you need more than one cookie sheet. They're called sheet trays, they're called cookie sheets. They're predominantly a half sheet, which is approximately 16 by 18 inches. Most all of them now have sides on them so that you can do other things besides cookies on them. But the reason you want at least two is when the cookies I just put in come out of the oven, that cookie sheet needs to cool before I can put a second group on it. So by having two, you can rotate and have one ready to go, have one in the oven, but you don't want to put cookie dough on a hot sheet because it'll start to bake before it hits the oven. 9 by 13 pans, most everybody's got at least one. Use it. Use it for anything, but especially use it for brownies. So I'll share the recipes. I'll give you some lists of some basic pantry things to think about. Please go out there and bake up a storm. If you need any of this equipment, Now We're Cooking would love to help you. We're open Monday through Saturday from 11 to 4. We're at the northeast corner of Paseo del Norte in Wyoming. It's time to restock and get ready for the new year. I mean, it's like, gosh, it's already the 13th of January, but it seems like Christmas was months ago. So we'd love to see you come in. We'd love to see you bake. Let me see what you make. I'll show you what I make. Thank you so much for watching. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye now.